Okay, so I wanted to make a video that kind of showed you arthrokinematics. Before we start talking about arthrokinematics, you have to identify the different joint surfaces. The way we classify those joint surfaces, one side is going to be concave, and then one side is going to be convex. Okay, so an example of a convex surface is just this ball. It's like rounded and it kind of goes outward like this, as you can see where my hand is. So this would be an example of a convex surface. The spoon would be an example of a concave surface, right? It goes inward. So you can see where my finger is right here. I'm just going to kind of travel along this spoon, and as you can see, it kind of dips in. All right, dips in, concave. Okay, now let's apply that to the shoulder joint. Okay, so we got right here. Let's start with the concave surface of the glenoid fossa, which is on the scapula. As you can see, it kind of looks like a spoon-like surface. It goes in. Now let's take a look here at the humerus. We can see it kind of, it's got a surface that goes out, kind of resembles that purple ball we were just looking at. So that would be convex. Okay, so now we have our two bones, right? We have our scapula, which is concave, and we have our humerus, which is convex. The next thing we're going to try and do is describe the arthrokinematics for shoulder abduction. So the way we do that, I want you to look at, we actually have to look at two different places. First, we want to take a look at what's happening at the actual articular surfaces. So where the humeral head meets the glenoid fossa, we're going to pay attention to what happens there. And then we're also going to take a look at what is happening at the distal portion of the bone that is moving. Okay, so let's use some terms in order to describe what's happening at these joint surfaces. So there's a number of terms that we can use, but the ones that we're going to use today are going to be glide or slide. So it's important to remember whenever we use those terms, we also have to include a direction in which that glide and slide is occurring in. So we'll come back to that direction later. We've identified the terminology for what happens at the articular surfaces. Now let's use the terminology for what's going to be used to describe what happens at the long end of the bone or the distal portion of the bone. And we want to use the term roll. Okay, so same thing. We want to make sure that we include the direction of the roll whenever we describe arthrokinematics. So I placed the dot, this black dot. I want you to pay attention to that whenever we're trying to describe the glide or slide. And then obviously you're going to take a look here where it says roll. You're going to watch the roll and tell me what direction the roll occurs in when we start to move the shoulder. Okay, so at the top of my screen, anything that moves in that direction, we're going to call that superior. And anything that moves downward towards the bottom of the screen, we're going to call that an inferior direction. Okay, so let's see what happens. Looks like we're all set up. Make sure you pay attention to that black dot. That's going to represent the glide or slide. Okay, here we go. So as I abduct the shoulder, you notice that the little black dot, it moves inferiorly toward the bottom of the screen. And the roll actually went in the opposite direction. So it went towards the top of the screen. Now let's see what happens when I bring it down. Now the roll moves toward the bottom of the screen, and the black dot that represents the glide moved back up. So during shoulder abduction, there is an inferior glide and a superior roll. During shoulder adduction, it's just the opposite direction. So let's take a look at it again. There's the inferior glide, superior roll, and inferior roll, superior glide. So shoulder AB and adduction is a good representation of the opposite direction rule when we talk about arthrokinematics. So when you have a convex surface moving on a relatively fixed concave surface, then the arthrokinematics are opposite direction because we have an inferior glide and a superior roll. So the two different parts of the joint or the two different parts of the bone are moving in opposite directions. This always occurs when a convex surface moves on a concave surface. Let's discuss the concave on convex rule. So before we do that, we're going to take a look at the bones again. So the glenoid fossa is considered concave, and the head of the humerus is considered convex. So let's take a look at this scapula. These two dots represent the roll and the glide or slide. This dot here on the acromion process represents the glide or the slide, so pay attention to that whenever we describe those two. And then this dot is going to represent the direction of the roll. Notice the direction that the glide and slide and the roll move in when we do shoulder abduction. Glide and slide at the top, roll at the bottom. So we'll abduct the shoulder and adduct the shoulder. My hand was kind of in the way, but you notice that both of those dots will move in the same direction. So let's take a look. The dot that represents the glide and slide moves superior, as well as the dot that represents the roll. It also moves superior during shoulder abduction. Let's look at it one more time. Both dots travel towards the top of the screen. Therefore, there is an superior roll and superior glide and slide during shoulder abduction. And the opposite would be an inferior glide and slide and an inferior roll during shoulder adduction. Therefore, whenever a concave surface moves on a relatively fixed convex surface, then the arthrokinematics involved are called same direction. I hope this video was helpful. If it wasn't helpful, please let me know, reach out to me, and then I'll try and demonstrate in a different way.